Louis C.K. did like a podcast on Stanley Kubrick, and he was talking about why Stanley Kubrick was so interesting. And Louis has a very original voice too in his comedy. I think there's a reason why he's so well regarded in the comedy world. But he's talking about why Stanley Kubrick, and he's like, this guy's literally an alien. You watch any one of his films, and it's like seeing the world that you live in and contend with on a daily basis through an alien's eyes.
Yeah.
And it's so unique to his, and that's kind of what you gotta have some original thoughts. It's not just, you can't just be like, I'm going to sit down and make authentic content.
Right.
You've got to actually just contend with things a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think the best of that community, they're, contending with it. And it might, you don't have to contend with the world's issues. You don't have to make 2001: A Space Odyssey to make an interesting YouTube pipe community video, or like a running community video, or, film photography or typewriting video. But you're listening to them and you're hearing something that is, it deviates from the norm a little bit.
Right.
And that's...
Yeah, you're hearing a stance. You're hearing a unique perspective. You're hearing someone that experienced something and has
that actually
good constructive criticism.
Exactly. Or like hearing a stance is great, because it's like a lot of times you're hearing a stance and then they discuss why they take that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if on just about anything, you might not agree with it, but if somebody sits down and they say, this is what I think, and here's the logic to how I got here.
A thesis.
If they've put the time together to come up with a defense for the thesis, a lot of the time, and this isn't the case for everything.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time you're going to be like, oh, I can see exactly how you got there.
Yeah.
You still might not agree with it, but majority of the time it's like, oh, I see how you got there.
And I think that like our episodes where we come in hot with something, where we have a stance, and we might have a thesis, and maybe we don't have a perfectly crafted defense of it, but we're volleying back and forth with a challenge to that thesis, or agreeing on it and unpacking different defenses between us of that kind of thesis, versus episodes where I remember, kind of talking about Technopoly before I had finished reading it, and I'm like, I don't feel equipped right now to really have a stance on this. I'm still figuring it out. And so that episode, while it might be interesting for some core viewers, isn't going to be as interesting to a wider audience, because I'm or we on a different subject are working through something. Like we don't know yet. And there is something interesting about that process, but there's something certainly much more dramatic about thesis, defense, and then argument, a debate, really.
Debate.
Even if it's not heated, and which we certainly don't do.
I think I think debate is so over indexed in our current rendition of culture.
Yeah.
Like, I think people just want to sit down and listen and not have an opinion on things a lot of times. And I think that's what's like, I know that's what's great to me about a lot of the YouTube pipe community stuff, is I can just sit down and listen.
Yeah.
Or, especially with film photography channels and things like that. And some of them are like actually like sensory, like ASMR.
Yes,
sensory,
and
it's
that
very
goes,
satisfying. That's
some of your pipe guys with their voices,
voice cadence,
their accent.
And,
like I was mesmerized by just the one gentleman's deep Southern.
Yeah.
Like it was just a beautiful song to listen to.
Absolutely.
And then if it's
rhythmic,
poetic.
Absolutely.
And so those are some of the things I'm talking about too when it comes to just an authentic impulse isn't always enough.
Yeah.
Because if you have bad audio, if your framing is uncomfortable, if there are other things that are beyond your control, it could be the sound of your voice, it could be other things that
I do think
give friction to experiencing your video.
I agree with that less now than I would have a couple of years ago, because I do think the content is the most important thing.
100%.
Now. Like you can, you could be Stephen Hawking.
Yes.
And if you're talking about some shit that people care about, people are going to pay attention.
Well, for RFK, for example.
100%.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Ben Shapiro on the other side of things.
Yeah.
His, I don't want to start getting.
I don't want to
start getting into criticizing people's voices. I don't want to. I don't want to be like.
No, but it is.
But his voice is less pleasing to my ear. Than Sam Elliott, or the gentleman from the pipe video you showed me. Like there are some aesthetic qualities to things, whether it's visually or orally, that are a warm blanket that wraps you up, in addition to the authenticity,
And,
in addition to the ability to communicate more clearly and concisely.
It's also a differentiator.
Yeah.
Like,
True.
Like, you could play a clip of, I mean, RFK is a great example. You could play a clip of RFK and anybody who's heard him is going to be like, I know who that is.
Struggle, yeah.
And some people might be like, oh, that's a turnoff, but it's like having we use the same intro in every one of our videos.
Right.
I'm sure there's some people
Yes.
who have been listening. There's probably a couple of people who have been listening for a year who they have heard that 52 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a comforting psychological
Right.
effect. Maybe you were on vacation one time and you watched 3 of our videos, and that is embedded into the experience of your vacation.
That's right.
And so it is a differentiator.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it gets like the content is the most important thing.
Right.
And then, having, which I believe, that's firmly what I believe now more than ever. And I mean, that's a great example of, I found his voice off-putting, and then over time it becomes less, way less. You're listening to what he has to say.
Desensitize is not a good word, but you're sort of, you're, the rough edges are rounded
It's like a
off.
non-factor at some point.
Yeah. Especially
so
because what he says is so engaging.
That's what I would detach from a little bit in terms of, I mean, I think some of these guys have had crap video.
Yeah.
Like, especially in like the YouTube hype community the best is like when you do photography stuff and it's like crap video, and it's like, well, you're making it, but then you hear some of the stuff they're saying and it's like, like the video might look like crap, but this person is like a master at photography.
Right.
Like it is just abundantly clear listening to what they have to say.
And they may just be also a good communicator. They don't have to be some like great storyteller and all that, even if they're not telling a story necessarily, but just communicating something. But I found where I'm like, this guy's really authentic. I love this old camcorder that he's using. Like they're starting to check all the boxes, and I'm 5-10 minutes into the video and I'm like, we're going all over the place here. We're taking long pauses. Your audio's a little rough, or like you're kind of meandering. You're not really staying on track. Like I'm just like, your communication skills are making this difficult to stay focused on.
I wonder if people feel that way about this podcast right now.
And I know that we have episodes that are like that. The hope is with us, and part of why we did this is the cameras don't really. That camera's out, by the way. The cameras don't really affect us. It doesn't, like the judge telling me, shoot back behind me. They don't box us in, like we're not locked down. So, the hope for our podcast is I feel like I'm hanging out with 2 guys that are having a legit conversation at a coffee shop. Yeah. Like these guys are just having a legit conversation, and conversations can be a little messy. They can be a little in and out. They can have a really great segue, but then the guy takes us back
it
5
ruins
minutes,
it.
and then we go off to the YMCA, and it's like. But then some people, and I think this is where like the right viewers, the people that we're really going to have a good connection with, go. That's the magic of it.
It had been a golden afternoon. And I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer and summer.